Bonjour à tous et bienvenue sur cette nouvelle interview de Motion Café, une interview un peu différente de d'habitude où on va être beaucoup plus technique. Et pour inaugurer cette nouvelle interview, on a l'honneur de recevoir Monsieur Jr Canest qui va nous présenter un peu ses projets. Donc voilà, je m'excuse par avance de mon anglais qui va peut-être en choquer certains et des petits cris de bébé qu'il y a derrière, mais bon, c'est comme ça. Donc voilà, so hello Jorge, how are you?
Good, good. Thanks for having me here. That's a lot of French that I didn't understand, but I heard something like Jr Canest there, something that's
Yeah.
me.
Yeah. Thank you for your time and for us. Because
Yeah, no
a lot of
problem.
lot of people likes you on the forum and in our team. So
I don't know why, but thank you.
yeah, maybe but you work. But so can you maybe just introduce a bit yourself for the ones doesn't know you quickly?
Yeah. My name is Jorge Rolando Canedo Estrada. I go by short as Jr Canest online, just as a combination of my name. I am originally from Bolivia in South America. And I kind of started learning After Effects and animation kind of on my own when I was back in Bolivia. Eventually, I went to Vancouver Film School for a program in digital design since I got a scholarship there. And after that, I worked at a Buck in Los Angeles as an animator. Started as an intern, then became a full-time animator. And then after that, I came back to Vancouver, where I am now. And I am, I worked at Giant Ant for 4.5 years, almost 5 years. Started as an animator, then became an art director, and eventually became an associated creative director. And just recently, in the past 6 months, I've been doing freelance. And yeah, that's it, I guess.
Yeah, Giant and Buck. Yeah, nice.
Yeah, super amazing places
Yeah,
to work at. Yeah, just learned so much from them.
yeah, I think so. And so recently you talk about freelancing. Yeah.
Yes, that's
We
right.
saw that you dropped a huge project called The Biggest Story. So I will
Yeah.
put the link here under the video for the people who want to see it. Can you just talk about it? We have the chance to work together and with Gregory in the team. But it was
Yeah.
like a project of 30 minutes of illustration and animation with more than 40 animators. Well, just wondering, how did you find all these people and manage to make the
Yeah,
movie great?
you know what? I'm actually gonna pull the the document, uh, which shows a bit of behind the scenes, I guess, of the entire project. But yeah, so like I've done projects with this organization called Crossway before, and probably about a year and a half or so ago, like sometime last year, they reached out to me saying, "Hey, there's this book that is being illustrated by Don Clark from A Visual Creature, and we think it would be cool. Like the illustrations are basically done, and it will be cool to kind of make an animation of it." And I was like, "Man, that sounds amazing." So I was about to quit my job to go and do this. Like I was a giant ant at the time, but obviously talking to my wife, realized that that wasn't the wisest thing to do, especially with a kid. So eventually, just what I ended up talking to them, saying, okay, how are we gonna do this? Like we're talking about like so many illustrations. You can actually, I'm gonna share my screen with you so you can see what I'm showing.
But they were like 10 parts of the movie or more than.
Yeah.
That's me.
So
This is so much.
yeah,
Stuff.
so they reached out to me saying, "Hey, can we animate it?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure, I'll do it." I quit my job, and obviously I decided not to. And then I was like, "Well, there's no way I'm gonna be able to do this all on my own." Like we're talking about 10 chapters. The actual read of the book ended up being about 30 minutes, like between 26 minutes and 30 minutes. And so what I decided to do is like, well, maybe what we can do is just start finding people that will be interested in animating shots. and I can take more of a role of a director and putting everything together instead of just animating the whole thing, which is just insane. So so they said, yeah, let's do it. And I tried to convince them to get a little bit of budget, so we would, like, it was basically, most of it was just a labor of love, but there was still it was a little bit of money per person per shot, kind of like a little thank you note, I guess.
Yeah.
So I started reaching out to people, and the first people that started replying was Josh Edwards. He's an animator now at Buck Sydney. Phil Borst. And then kind of like with them, they started telling more of their friends, I guess, and those friends started telling more people, and I kept posting it online, and places was like, hey, does anybody want to animate like this massive Bible story?
That's awesome.
And a bunch of people started coming in, to the point that like we had all these people that jumped in and built the whole thing. And yeah, I mean,
that's great. This is the way I ended up here. Like, Gregory talked to you, and he talked this project about me. Say, yeah, okay, I want to animate too.
Yeah,
sounds great.
Yeah, so I basically, like, I started doing all the animatics, working with the audio. Ended up working, contacting a friend that I worked with before, John Poon, and he did all the audio. And then I would just send animatics to animators, and lots, like, I have no idea how many emails. Like, every shot needed a whole bunch of stuff, and a bunch of comments, and working with. It was crazy. And at the time, I was still having a full-time job, so it was kind of like after hours thing. Here you can see.
Yeah, there's a lot of work, but that's awesome to organize all these people around the world without any contacts. Like vocal and visual contacts. That's really awesome.
Yeah, it was super cool. So yeah, that was that. I don't know if there was anything else you wanted to know about it.
No, it was just about this project. I will just post the link for the people to see it, because it's a great project. So that's pretty good.
And you can buy the DVD online. I don't know if you can actually buy the film online yet. I think they're waiting. But yeah, it's
cool. And you've been giving some courses too on Learn Squared?
Yeah.
A month or a month and a half, something like that?
Right. That's been actually really cool. So
I know Gregory took the course and he talked about it, and it sounds like it's really great, because you go through the basics, like the principle of animation and the pretty basic stuff, but sometimes we forgot, as we working.
Yeah, it's definitely fundamentals of motion design, more than anything super complicated. So Ash Thorpe, who's one of the main people at Learn Squared, he was trying to convince me to do a lesson, and I said no for the longest time, because I just didn't think I was, I just know so many more animators that are so much better than me, and I was like, I want to take lessons from other people, and I don't think I'm ready to give a full lesson. But anyway, he convinced, after saying no a few times, he kept asking me, and then at one point I was like, you know what, maybe it's a good idea. So I decided to kind of like start putting it together, and I think in total I spent probably around 150 hours just putting the course together. And it's 4 lessons. The first one, defining motion design, kind of like just talks a little bit about history and trying to define motion design, because I feel like it's such a broad term that we don't often know what we're talking about. And I kind of try to define it in my own way, the way I see it.
It's a bunch of lot of stuff when you try to explain it. There's so much different stuff you can put in motion design. That's really
exactly. And like it's it's animation ultimately, and it's kind of like where animation meets graphic design, and that's
sometimes when you say I'm doing animation, you're like, oh, it's like Disney or Pixar,
right?
No, really not.
exactly. So I mean, there's a whole discussion about animation versus motion design, and what are the differences, are there any difference, but I do think there is a place for motion design as its own thing. And that's kind of what I try to defend pretty much the entire lesson, by giving it a bit of a history and from what I understand and in my experience, what I've learned, what motion design is. Then I get into the principles of animation, based on the 12 principles by Disney's, and so we kind of break them down a bit and apply them to motion design, and then basically we just go through a small project from concept to design to audio to animation, and so it's kind of like a broad view of a motion design project. Like it's a fairly simple project that touches on the fundamentals of animation, but yeah, we just wanted to make a course that people that were curious about motion design, or people that kind of wanted to go back to the fundamentals a bit and refresh their memory. And yeah, the stuff that people have been doing, it's actually, there's some really cool stuff, some really cool homeworks that people have been posting, and a lot of people obviously have a bit of an animation background already, so it's kind of cool.
So you can take it even if you already know, you have good knowledge of After Effects.
Yeah, absolutely. Even, like for people that, like, I know there's people that are gonna take it that know After Effects way better than me, for example. But the fact that it kind of forces you to finish a project, even for that reason, I would take it. Like, it's the fact that, okay, this is a good chance for me to kind of like go back through the process that you probably know already, but it's forcing me to come up with a project at the end of it. Which
maybe it's good to see a new workflow, or
right,
discover new tips maybe too. So
yeah,
so, yeah.
Yeah, so that was that.
Yeah, sure. And so recently you've dropped a bomb with your new showreel. Like a lot of people loved it, especially the introduction with all these shapes and these smooth keyframes. So can you maybe just talk a bit about it?
Totally.
Like the introduction.
Totally.
Did you make a storyboard? Did you just go in After Effects and start to animate shapes and say, oh, like this, I like it, and do this.
Yeah, no, it wasn't random. The very first thing I did was I already knew the song that I wanted to use. So the very first thing I did is the song by Tabachka that I've listened to so many times since, I don't even know what year it came out, but it's not a new song. So the first thing I did was to obviously edit the whole thing.
Quick edit with Audition.
Yeah, so it was just a simple edit, and kind of like while I was doing that in the intro, I started to think, okay, here's where I'm gonna do the intro, and I don't know exactly what it's gonna be, but I'm making the rhythm for it. So that was the very first step. And then one thing that I really wanted to show, it was kind of what I was I've been into more and more, and it's kind of like this more intricate attention to animation, I guess. And one of the things that was represented in that was when I redid my logo after I don't know how many years. So that was my old logo, and I kind of like changed a few things and just made it thinner and fixed the angles and made it a bit more mathematically accurate, which sometimes I like to do. And so that was kind of like the inspiration. I was like, okay, this is kind of like the new me, I guess, since school. And I was like, maybe there's a way that I can kind of take this to the next level and use that as my intro. So I started playing with some designs. Let me see. And I kind of just went into After Effects and started just looking at the things that I really liked about the software, and how there were all these elements in the graph editors that they are kind of like, they have a sense of design and beauty in it that I really, really liked. And I was like, I want to use this visuals of graph editors and nulls, and I want to bring them into an actual animation. So these are just some screenshots from, as a reference to see how like the curves work and whatever. And I also really like that idea of like compositions. It's got like these 3 elements of, you know, like this old icon of compositions that has been there since the beginning, which is a circle, a square, and a triangle. And I was like, well, maybe there's a way to kind of combine these three elements, the circle, the square, and the triangle, with all these nulls and all these curves, and also make it as this part of the logo.
Yeah.
And my logo in reality has this three elements, like the circle, the square, the triangle. They're all kind of like they're all somehow represented in the logo as they are being formed. Like you can see the triangles here, the square obviously, and the circle. And in a way, it's a bit forced, but you know, I kind of wanted to justify the elements in some way.
My logo is mathematical. Come on.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I started with the first one. And let me see if I can open this very first one. And you know, that was my storyboard, and like, because part of the design and the concept is that it's just so intricate. Like the design, that there's a lot of very small elements. So I didn't necessarily have to go and sketch it out. I basically just started designing it inside Illustrator. So just basically recreated all these elements of the After Effects. And it's all in Illustrator, and each kind of element had its own thing. And at this point, I'm not really thinking of animation. Like, I know I want to animate them in a cool way, but I don't have specific transitions in mind. But I'm basically just creating some, and I kind of want to make posters of these because I was actually quite happy with how they turned out. And maybe
that's pretty good. I mean, I like the graphic stuff. You know, it's pretty abstract, but it's really graphic.
Yeah, but like obviously each part has, you know, obviously you have a null here, which is just a regular null. Then you have
these curves inside.
You have your curves in there. And you have another square null. So it's all kind of like After Effects elements, just used in an interesting way to make it a bit more appealing. So that was the square, and then there was the triangle, which I kind of took a bit more freedoms. Like, you would never see something like this in After Effects, where it's a combination of curves and nulls and stuff. But so that was that, and then eventually they would all come together to form
your logo.
My logo, exactly, which is here, which is very simple. And then kind of playing with the angles and all these things, and just adding points where it made sense whenever there was a connection and whatnot. Like it looks kind of random, but they all have a specific connection, and there's a connection of it for some reason. So this was the final frame that I wanted to end. You know, playing with the same idea of, you have your circle, you have your square, and I have the triangles. And the combination of the three and arranged in an interesting way, it's what forms the logo. So that's kind of that's kind of like the idea behind it all. And I did this like the week after I left Giant Ant. I was just like, I didn't really have any project at the moment, so I just kind of like did this in that 1 week. And I actually didn't start actually animating it for, I don't know a few months, because I got really busy, and then I wasn't quite sure if it was right, and I started second guessing the music, and I started doing certain edits with like the actual demo reel.
It's probably the worst work to do when you work for yourself on your demo.
Yeah.
Never happy.
I know. So I had had the first animatics. That was like no intro. Like initially it was that we were gonna go through the first three elements, then in one color, then again to the three elements as they combine into the logo, which obviously changed later on. And then I just focused on the edit after that, which I won't really talk much about. A bunch of versions. I don't know how many versions. These are just my favorite ones. But yeah, eventually, once I was pretty happy with the edit, then I was like, okay, I need to animate this guy. So so that's how, I don't know, do you want me to just kind of jump in, or?
Yeah, okay. Oh, totally.
Cool.
Good.
So I already had the audio, of course, and let me see if I can make some room here. Sorry, I'm not used to working in one screen. But I don't know, I kind of created this little comps with a few little expressions so I could scale things up and down. And if you notice, the handles here, they still the same size.
Oh, nice.
So that kind of gave me a bunch of freedom for a bunch of sections to kind of create interesting intersections, if that makes sense. So I did that I built kind of like a circle and a square that I reused a bunch of times. So those were the squares. Sorry, those were the circles. And for example, I had my main square, which, nope, not this one. Maybe it's called master anchor point. Yeah, so I had little things like this that I reused in a bunch of places, and I can always scale and, you know, play whatever size I wanted without losing the size of the squares and keeping a few details that anchor points tend to have, which is like the little corners here. So yeah, I don't know. I mean,
so you made the asset and then you just starting to mix it and play with them.
Yeah, and a lot of it was like, because I'm playing with nulls and all these connections, I wanted the animation to reflect that. So everything is connected in one way or another. And in some parts it gets kind of tricky because I have, you know, I have a fake null being animated by a real null, which is kind of funny. And then I had curves. Anyway, there was a few moments where it got kind of meta, where like, whoa, which one is the real one, which one is not. Like when I was animating these curves, there were like curves that I was animating to animate the curve. I don't know if that makes any sense, but
oh, that's so nice.
So I kind of treated each section kind of as its own part. So we have the circle at the beginning, and then there's actually a few cuts, and they kind of introduce new elements. So here, from here to here, we introduce a whole bunch of new elements just by cutting. And then the square kind of introduces these curves, and then here there's actually another cut. So initially the idea was that these lines, I don't know if you can see them properly, but these lines would eventually become the side of the triangle here. And I actually tried a whole bunch of ways to actually make it smooth, and ended up not liking anything. So eventually I just kind of faked it. So like it starts moving. If you see this point and this point, they kind of start moving in the direction to make the triangle, but then it cuts to the line, and it gives you the idea that it actually becomes that, or at least there's a little feel that.
And your background is changing color, so it helps to don't see the cut, I guess.
Exactly. Yeah, and then there was, like, as you can see, there's just a lot of nulls controlling things and connecting things, which was this transition. I think I had to do it like 5 times because it just wasn't working, and eventually it did.
You love playing with nulls.
Yeah.
I remember when you were talking at the Motion Plus design and you showed the Asana stuff. There was a bunch of nulls everywhere. What? How the hell did he do to, you know, just remember what does what?
Yeah, it's kind of like when I see it again like this, like I'm like I don't remember half the things I did. But you know, it happens. I think everybody will really like when you're in it, you kind of know what you're doing, and hopefully you'll remember. I mean, my naming and things like this is not the greatest example for organized projects, but I mean, it was fairly organized. But yeah, I don't know. That's kind of it. I mean, there's a lot of just connecting nulls and creating circles and simple rotations, and it's actually not that complicated. And then
It's just
and then at the end it's simply, just cut from the line to the actual logo.
That's awesome.
And that's it. So
Yeah, I mean, the way you present it, it sounds like so easy, but doesn't look like a lot of really good techniques. But it's just the way of design the stuff, animate the stuff, play with the curves to make it work well.
yeah, and there isn't really any plugins at all. Like yeah, I don't think. I mean, at first I was thinking about using some interesting plugins for the connections and the lines, and there's a bunch out there like that connect lines, but there's some that are like Cluster, for example. I don't know if you heard of the plugin. Like it's really great, but it was overly complicated for what I needed, and it was adding just like there were way too many expressions for a simple connection that I needed, which was just one path connecting to the other one. So I actually spent a whole bunch of time trying to create a little script that would actually work, and it was based on Joey Corman from School of Motion. Yeah. So I hope he's okay with me sharing this actually. But let me see 1 second. I'm just gonna find it.
Yeah, if you're not sure now, you just ask him and give me the link if you can later. So
yeah, I think it'll be okay. But he did this little rig. I mean, he's awesome, but he did this rig where you could kind of create like a ball squashing, stretching. So you should talk to him if you want him to tell you how he does it. Like I know expressions, like I can get my way around it, but I don't know if I will be able to just code something like this from scratch. But basically, I saw what he had here, and like, even though I didn't want the stretch and stuff, you had a simple way of connecting two lines with nulls without a crazy amount of code. Like there's really not that much code going on. Oh, this is not the actual code. Like we're talking about like 3 properties with a few lines each, and I'm like, okay, there's something interesting about this that is not like Cluster or some of those other plugins that are just crazy. So I basically took that and kind of modified it a bit and trying to learn what those lines were doing, what they weren't, to create this, which is just a simple, which I ended up using quite a bit.
But
and,
did you use the beam effect or no?
No, I didn't want to use the beam effect because I needed a bunch of lines that were custom, like in terms of particularly the dotted lines, which you can't create with beam effect.
Yeah.
So that was the main reason why I didn't do that. And I wanted to, I kind of wanted to play with it anyways. So I ended up taking his code and just modifying it, which is very simple. Basically, it takes the scale and the rotation from each null and gives you the result, which is this. So that was that, and then I posted it on Twitter, and then a really amazing coder, which name is what's his name? Just Suke Betagram. You know Betagram?
Mashimoto, Suke Mashimoto.
Yeah.
Something like this, I think.
Yeah, he tells me, hey, I did this like a while ago, and he sends me like his script, which is exactly like a little bit cleaner. That's not him. That's not. I thought it was Betagram, maybe not.
Yeah, I think it. I talked to him this week because I asked him something about this script. But
yeah, anyway, he's amazing. He's super talented, and like the. Anyway,
Shinsuke Matsumoto.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
That's the name.
And then he tells me, oh yeah, I did this, and he's got a bunch of like scripts, and I was like, oh great. It's like I should have just asked before spending I don't know how many hours, but it was still fun to do that. And that's kind of like the only plugin or script or whatever you want to call it that I really used for the entire project. yeah, there's nothing. Everything else is just pre-comps and keyframes. There's nothing really that extraordinary.
Spend a lot of time on the curves.
Yeah, and I think one of the main things was the design. Like kind of like the design had. I spent a lot of time when I was just making the first versions of this, and that kind of like already. I already knew my in and out points basically, and I just kind of needed to make some interesting transitions between them, and yeah, that's it really.
Yeah, it sounds so easy when you say, but yeah.
Yeah.
But it looks like, yeah, as you said, it looks easy. It's just really technical. It's just spending time on rhythm and curves and
yeah,
design.
and I'm doing a lot of like one thing that you don't see here is just, you know, each transition. I had to do like a few versions of it because I would do one and I would finish it. I would spend like a day on one transition, and then I see it the next day and I'm like, this is not working, and you kind of need to start again until you find one that works. So,
and do you have an estimation of your time spent on this animation, or maybe?
Well, let's see. I have my tracker that I use to keep track of all my work. Let's see the reports. That will be, what project was this? That will be my reel, I guess. Okay, so apparently this doesn't seem right. Maybe it is actually. No, this doesn't seem right. It says that I spent about 20 hours on animation, about 8 hours on design.
Oh yeah.
And 8 hours
for 5 seconds.
yeah, and 8 hours on the edit. So total like the edit and the design and everything. It says like it's 35 hours, which might be accurate. Maybe.
That's a lot of the keyframes.
Yeah, so I did a lot of the design and the first edit on April, and then nothing in May, nothing in June, nothing in July, nothing in August, and then in September I kind of finished animation, just 12 hours, and then October kind of finished a few other things. So,
but just after your reel, we saw some few shots inspiring by your introduction, you know, with all these squares and stuff,
right,
popping on Dribble or Motion Cafe forum, you know. That was funny, but that's great to inspire people like that.
Yeah,
make them create something.
Yeah, I mean I completely get that. Like I do that sometimes. Even when I see something cool, I kind of want to know how they did it, and the best way to do it is just to try it and kind of like do your own thing. Awesome. But yeah, I don't know if there was any other questions. I mean, I can get more specific maybe, but
I don't know. I think we saw pretty much everything, except you have something like I don't know, something special to show in this introduction. But I think you covered basically everything.
Yeah, like I said, there's nothing really that just a lot of trial and error. Yeah, I'm trying to think if there's one part that I was like, oh yeah, I was so proud of the way I did this. But I mean, to be honest, most of it was just like this transition, getting it to where I wanted it. This was like, I don't know how many versions I did of this one because it just wasn't working.
Well, that's the final is here, so
yeah,
you made it right finally. Well, thank you. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome to see this.
Of course. Yeah.
And
yeah, I don't know if there was anything else that you wanted. I could probably open a few other projects or.
Yeah, I don't know if you have time because you told me you have like phone calls.
Yeah, I have. Yeah, no, we have a bit of time.
Yeah, except if you have like a project you want to show. I don't know which one you have. It's yours, so.
Oh, let's see. Well, can you think of something?
Do you have like the FITC something on your machine?
Oh, Not the whole thing. It's just that project is so massive.
Yeah, I guess.
Like I just have a few sections of it. But there's actually, let me show you this project that we recently finished with. Actually, there's nothing special about that one either. I was gonna show this one, but the one that I did with Raphael for Adobe Max. But yeah, I mean, again, it's just a lot of meticulous detail on the animations and taking care of each element separately. Here, let me see if you're showing.
Yeah, I saw some work of Raphael because I think it's your apprentice on the. I mean, if it's this one on Learn Squared.
Yeah,
I saw there was an apprentice and I went to his work. He's pretty good illustrator. Okay.
Yeah, he's amazing. He's, I mean, for example, for FITC, he art directed the whole thing. So most of the designs that you see them, if not all, they're his. But yeah, no, he's an amazing. Most of his work online is illustration, but I mean, his design work is, I think, is fantastic. Yeah, I can't really think of any.
Maybe we can drop in this Max just to show some few things. Oh.
Yeah, I'll open it. There's nothing. Again, there's nothing like most of my animations don't really have a lot of crazy wow, more than just a lot of trial and error until it feels right. But for example, the first thing I did for this project was this little squiggle, which I did it in Flash, and you know, frame by frame animation. It's not like something I do all the time. I do it, but I'm not the best at it. But I enjoy doing it. That's kind of how I started. So this is just I did this in Flash, and then I brought it into After Effects, and here's where I added all the textures and different color gradients and stuff. So that was the first thing I did for that one. And then from there, I just went kind of like shape by shape and figure out how it could transition from one to the next. So for example, if we focus on, let's focus on, sorry, let me find a good one. Well, we can focus on the line first. So the line started there, and then I just kind of like animated on its own as if it was the only thing. And then a few moments in the animation, so the line goes here, and then it kind of like disappears, but it comes on the other end. So all the animations are kind of connected in one way or another. And then it kind of bounces from one side to the next, and then does it again. Another one that, so if you look at this white box on the right, can't seem to find the actual box. But that one, you know, kind of like it starts moving down.
Yeah.
And as
it come back.
As it's coming down, it comes back in the form of the triangle here. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that's funny because sometimes it's just stuff you can't notice, you know, when you see it.
Yeah.
But when you explain, you say, "Oh wow!" It's like your introduction. I didn't notice there was curves and nulls, and I just thought it was a bunch of primitives and just playing with these. No.
Right.
I know you just explained to me it was nulls and After Effects stuff. Like, oh yeah.
Yeah.
There's really a lot of thought in this introduction and work.
Yeah. So in this one, for example, this texture kind of like it rotates to the right as if it's falling, just this section right here. And then as it falls, it kind of like vanishes down, and then it comes back on this side.
So all the animation works like that. Something disappeared to come back.
Yeah,
in the other
exactly.
place.
Probably the one that I had the most fun with because it was kind of like challenging because I had no idea how I was actually gonna do it. I think it was this guy. Yeah, so that was probably the
Tricky one.
Yeah, it was quite tricky because I wasn't quite sure how to kind of keep the gradient going on in a way that made sense. So let me solo it so you can see it's a bunch of combinations here.
Okay.
So it kind of, it's mostly just a bunch of shapes kind of being masked and a bunch being rotated. So this kind of like contracts into one rectangle, and then as it's moving down, it kind of comes down that way. And the reason why it did that is so I could introduce that top shape to make that X, which was kind of like a tricky transition. And then eventually just kind of like slides to your right to make room. Oh, sorry, I lost it. To make room for the M. And here, you know, it just cuts from here to here and kind of gives the sense that it's being masked by itself, if that makes sense.
And how did you manage for the gradient to apply it? How you just cut the stuff when you need it, just apply another?
Yeah, so then the gradient is just, yeah, it's just being masked and it rotates at certain points.
Okay.
But it's pretty simple.
Easy.
Yeah.
But the way you show it, it's everything look easy, but you know, it's just. I mean, you looks like you're using really basic stuff of After Effects, but push it and just really do it well to make it work.
Yeah. I mean,
it makes sense about what I say, you know.
I'm by no means like I know there's some people that are just such amazing problem solvers in After Effects and with like good tools, and I'm more of like try to solve it with what I know, and trying to, I don't know, I mean I still use, like I said, expressions and plugins, and I love using expressions as much as I can, but I don't know, I feel like there's so much of what you know that you can just apply to solve problems easily.
Yes.
And the more you do it, the more quick and fast they come. So
that's awesome.
So I don't know, like I actually have a better report of how long I spent on this one. If you're curious, I'm actually curious.
And like Raphael just designed the style frame of steps after you just animated.
That's right. That's right.
Oh.
Here.
Yeah, that's cool.
So, actually, yeah. So the total of it apparently was 9 hours.
9 hours?
Yeah. So I don't know if that's slow or fast, but
for me, I think it's fast. I don't know.
I don't know. It's only like 3 seconds, so it's.
Yeah, I know. But like for the biggest story, your 3 seconds of the title of chapter 8 took me like 60 or 70 hours because there was like 500 elements.
Yeah.
That was funny one.
Can be pretty crazy.
But that's great. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, I mean, there's no magic behind it. It's
just time and love.
Yeah, I remember Phil Borst, because when I was preparing the class, I kind of reached out to my favorite animators and asked them what, like just advice, I guess. And Phil Borst gave some really good advice, and was actually, you know what? Let me find it and quote him properly, if you don't mind waiting a second.
Funny how the way you say you look up for people, you know, and at the same time there is so much people look up after you, and some of the people, you know, like this chain of looking up to get better.
Yeah.
That's
oh, absolutely. I mean,
to hear.
Yeah. No. I look at so many people. Okay. Here it is. Phil Borst. I mean, there was a bunch of people that say a lot of things, but one thing that kind of is relevant to what we're talking about right now. So for me, starting out in motion design was a bit frustrating. I had to learn to be patient in learning because it has never come quickly for me. Making an effort to learn something new can be an intimidating task, and it's easy to give up early. I've had points where I've just given up on learning something new because it was just too difficult. But I really do believe if you're able to put in the effort and at the same time the patience, eventually you'll be able to accomplish what you're set out to do. And I don't know, I just feel like you know, the fact that he says like, oh, all these things don't come out easily for me, and he's such an amazing animator, it's pretty inspiring to know that, you know, just keep working hard, I guess. And
sometimes you just need some few words.
Some what?
Some few words to push you up, or like.
Right.
Like sometimes last year I was talking with Tony Zagoraios at Paris, you know. I was
yeah,
because I really love his work, you know, and all this black universe, black and white universe. And say, yeah, you know, man, I'm not alone. I have like graphic designer and some 3D modeler, and you like this alone in your room trying to do the same, you know. Sometimes you just want to give up, and just the way to know there is more than one people just cheers you up to say, okay, let's focus maybe just on one part and be good on this part and not.
Yeah. There's definitely a bit of both, you know, like understanding most of the areas in the field, but then being able to kind of like know which one you like the best and kind of focus on that.
Yeah.
Especially with motion design, like some of my very favorite pieces are the ones that I get to kind of like concept with another, like for example with Raphael, we get to concept something, and then, you know, his ideas give me ideas, and my ideas give him ideas, and then but then I know that, you know, like even though I wish I could design amazingly, I know that he'll be doing a better job, so kind of like hand out the direction of the design, to him, and then he hands out the design to me, and then I kind of lead the animation. And like that's probably like my favorite role to work with, that I get to conceptualize and direct, and then leave that designer alone for a bit, and have a few comments here and there, and direct, and then come back and do the animation. Though, like that's probably my favorite way of doing things. And
is the way you do it as freelance now, like, or
you're
trying to do all by yourself?
I'm trying to do it. I'm trying to do it that way. Although, like, there's been a bunch of little projects that I've been working on that are just graphic design, like book covers, for example. So they're like a one frame, which is something I've actually enjoyed more than I thought I was going to, because design intimidates me, because I know that you know, like I said, I can do it, but I'm not the greatest at it compared to so many other people. But when it's like a one frame or like one book cover, I enjoy quite a bit. Like the same with the intro for my demo reel, like because it was so contained, I don't know, there was something really fun about it. And so I still do it when it's a more contained sense, but when it's like a full piece, I'd rather find someone that can just own the design, if that makes sense.
Give you free time.
Yeah, well, it's mostly just like that sense of collaboration really interests me, where people are kind of focused on what they love doing the best.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know.
I see what you mean, but yeah, it's always you know, the big discussion when you talk with studios. There is the studios who love people can do everything but not really good, and there's studio who want just specialists at one thing. So that's the biggest problem now, I think, in the industry of motion graphics. Because,
yeah, no, it's definitely, and I actually don't necessarily think it's one or the other.
Yeah, I mean,
in my experience, sorry, or
no, talk. I will just say my things later.
In my experience, it's you know, you need both. You need specialists, but you also need people that can do a bit of everything. And a lot of times people that can, and it's also by projects, you know, like sometimes in a project I'll be the dude that kind of does a bit of everything, and in a project I'm the dude that is just specialized in this one shot for the animation, and that's fine. I don't think one is necessarily better than the other one.
I think it's good to know a bit of everything, but be specialized is good. I mean, yeah, as you said, there is no correct answer.
Yeah.
Because at the end, you always have to do a bit of everything. So.
Right. Like there's that. There's a thing that I always like to say. Which it's funny, when I was talking to Chris Kelly, when I was finding people, Chris Kelly from Oddfellows, when I was finding people to say stuff about what got them into motion design, he says something very similar. But it's like being humble enough to acknowledge that you're not good at everything. I mean, there are some people who are good at everything, in which case they are humble enough to admit they can do everything. But you know, like acknowledging your limits. It's a big thing that I've realized that I didn't want to realize back then. I just kind of wanted to be good at everything. But for me, at least, for me, it was important to acknowledge my limitations, and that kind of forces me to find people that are better than me at certain things, and then end up with a better result. But at the same time, not just being happy with where I am, like not, okay, I'm not that great at design. Poor me. That's not the thing. It's like, okay, I'm not that great at design, so I'm gonna find amazing designers that I can work with, and I'm gonna get better at design. So, like, acknowledging your limits but not conforming to them. And I said that in the motion design talk, and I kind of like repeating that to myself as many times as I can, because, like, you can forget about the second part as well, that where you're like, oh well, I'm not that great at this, so too bad. But you always try to keep getting better and better.
Yeah. I think it's a nice conclusion for this first video.
Cool.
Well, thank you for your time, really, and for showing us this. I hope people are gonna like it, because pretty much the first time we're doing this kind of content. So
cool.
But I'm
no, thanks.
Thank you so much.
It's an honor. Yeah, thank you.
We just finished with a bit of French, I'm sorry.
Go for it.
Thank you. Donc voilà, merci d'avoir suivi cette interview, on espère que ça vous a plu. Surtout, n'hésitez pas en commentaire à nous dire si vous avez envie de voir d'autres personnes, etc. Donc un grand merci encore à Jorge pour son temps, et à très vite.